The first time I saw Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time was at the Game On exhibition, where I got to see the GameCube version in action, and it immediately caught my attention. I later bought the game for PC, but that version didn't excite me quite as much. Now, after finally returning to it all these years later, I'm really glad I decided to give the game a third chance. But after looking into the original PC version, I realized that playing it comfortably on a modern computer would require a community patch. I installed the patch right away, although I also captured some footage of the unpatched version for the video. Then, just as I was about to continue playing today, the game crashed. Apparently, GOG had just released its own overhaul of the game and added it to the GOG preservation program. The update had installed itself over my community patched copy, and the two didn't seem particularly happy to meet each other. But since I now had footage of the unpatched version, the community patched version, and GOG's new overhaul, I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to compare all three. First, we have the previous GOG release, before the game joined the preservation program. As far as I know, this was essentially the original PC version, packaged by GOG so it could still run on modern computers. I believe the versions currently available through Steam and Ubisoft Connect are largely the same. It works, but only in 4x3, and it doesn't recognize modern controllers. I actually gave up on playing it for that reason, because playing this game with a mouse and keyboard is a big no-no for me. The community-made Sands of Time Fix compilation bundles several fixes together. It adds widescreen support at your monitor's native resolution, lets you skip cutscenes, and includes pre-configured profiles for modern controllers. The on-screen prompts work correctly for the main action buttons. However, the movement and camera controls are still listed using some strange mouse and keyboard bindings. At this point, it's important to understand that the camera doesn't give you full 360-degree control. You can rotate it horizontally around the prince and zoom out, but you can't freely adjust its height. There is also a button that switches to an alternate side view, which can be useful during certain platforming sections. Another camera button switches to a first-person view, but sometimes it only makes things more confusing. I played for about an hour of actual gameplay, and honestly, the camera didn't cause me too much trouble. That's especially true when you compare it with games that used completely fixed camera angles, which were still very common at the time. The mechanic that did give me some trouble was wall running. You can only run along a wall for a limited amount of time, so starting the run as close to the edge as possible is really important. Other than that, and I'm saying this before getting much further into the game, most of the early platforming sections don't seem to require brutally precise timing. You mainly need to be careful not to press the wrong button at the wrong moment. The combat is still satisfying, although I do miss the light and heavy attack systems found in modern games. Here, the dagger can freeze enemies, but it doesn't deal much damage by itself. I also still need to get the hang of the rewind mechanic, because it isn't as immediate as similar mechanics in modern games. The graphics are impressive for their time, with complex rooms and some great lighting. Even the 3D character models don't give me the uncanny valley feeling I get from so many other PS2 era games. However, the cinematics haven't aged nearly as well. The sound quality isn't great, and when viewed on a modern PC, they actually look worse than the game itself.
Inside the hourglass is a marvel that no living man has seen. Alas, only the dagger can unlock the sands of time, and it belongs to a greater one than I.
And now it's time to take a look at GOG's official patch. The good news is that a complete uninstall and reinstall fixed the conflict without deleting my save files. The less convenient news is that you need to configure the controller yourself, and the game identifies its inputs using generic labels such as button 0 and button 1, rather than showing the actual buttons on your controller. This makes both the setup process and the on-screen instructions more confusing than they need to be. Incidentally, both patches leave the walk toggle unmapped. This option is intended for older digital controllers without analog sticks, where you need a separate button to switch between walking and running because you can't control movement speed by adjusting how far you push the stick. On the positive side, GOG's official patch lets you adjust the field of view and run the game at more than 60 frames per second without breaking its physics. That's a welcome addition if high frame rates are particularly important to you. It also prevents the mouse cursor from moving onto a second display in a dual monitor setup, something that would normally require software such as dual monitor tools. I did encounter the extreme fog issue once, and at least one other user has reported experiencing it as well. If it happens to you, it may be worth checking the settings in the hardware INI file by following the PC Gaming Wiki guide linked in the description. As I hinted earlier, you can fortunately still use the community mod. All you need to do is install it normally, then launch the original executable through the additional executables menu in GOG Galaxy. Personally, that's how I prefer to continue playing. Still, if I had to choose a winner, I would call it a tie, since each patch handles different aspects of the game better. Of course, GOG may continue updating its version and make further improvements, but for now, that's where things stand.
Sense of Time is just the beginning.
What do you think? Should GOG continue developing its own solutions, or should it build on long-standing community fixes and contribute its modifications back to the community? Let me know in the comments.